Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to IBC 2013 and welcome to the Autodesk booth. For the next half hour or so, I have the pleasure of introducing to the stage Mr. Jon Hollis. So, Jon, please come on up. For those of you who are not familiar with Jon, Jon's one of the pioneers of the visual effects industry. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you coming over from London for this presentation and joining us for a discussion about your perspective on the industry itself, your evolving career, some of the pioneering things that you've done, and of course, your impressions of the new software, the new 20th anniversary of Flame. So that's why we kind of invited you here, but I think it all starts with better understanding for the audience of who you are and what your experience was like in the past, what I think you said 30 years you've been in this business.
I think 30 years now, yeah. Makes
30
me
years.
feel very old, but still working. So.
That's great. No, it's amazing. And so looking back, I mean, tell us a little bit about where you actually started.
Well, I started as an edit assistant in a 1-inch online place. And back in the day then, there was just tons and tons of hardware everywhere you looked. So we had I think it was about 30 1-inch machines and 2-inch machines.
Analog days.
Total analog. Everything was analog. Everything was 48, 50 racks of gear. And I really got on quite quick because I could lace up a 1-inch machine faster than anyone else.
Right.
So that was like the most important thing at the time for an editor.
For those of you who are not familiar with that,
Sorry,
we used to have, first it was 2-inch tape.
Yeah, I used to splice 2-inch tape as well.
Yeah, that's how editing actually happened with a razor blade back in the old days. And then it went to a 1-inch tape, and that physically needed to be threaded onto a machine and rolled on. And
the faster you could do it,
the
happier the editor was, yeah.
Yeah, that's how you became really important and valuable in the facility.
Yeah, so you just sort of work your way up through things like that. Then I always wanted to be an editor, so I progressed into online editing. And again, I was quite sort of in awe of all the lights and the levers and things like this. And I just worked my way up through there until it became like a digital editing took over.
Right.
And then that's when I really started to sort of get interested in what was going on, because all of a sudden you could layer things up without losing quality.
Right.
That was like a huge deal back then.
You could do 100 passes and it would still stay
still
nice
the
and
same,
sharp.
yeah. Whereas before that, you could get to 3 or 4 and it would really start getting quite bad.
Right. And so that was in the early days of the London Soho market. When was the first time that you actually saw a Flame demo?
First Flame demo was when I was at the mill. I was head of editing there.
Okay.
And we went to see it. It was in like a back room somewhere, and I was so impressed with it because it just seemed like a really clever box. It had all the tracking stuff in there. It had all this sort of thing going on. And it was clip-based. And for me, I've been trying to get that with all my discs and all the sort of stuff I could.
Right. In the old online room, you basically had a huge switcher. We would call a switcher a vision mixer, right? So you had different inputs to that, and you could adjust sliders and things, but it was this big console, right? It wasn't really very tactile.
So all of a sudden I was in a room and there was a tablet and a pen and a piece of funky software that had a great name as well. I was really taken with the whole image of
the flame
and the logo and all that stuff. So I sort of went pretty much straight back into my boss and said, that's what I want to be doing. And they were like, nah, we'll keep you doing what you're doing. And so about a year later, I think we got one somehow, and I started using it. And I sort of realized really straight on, it sort of does everything. Not only can you create things all the time, but it really feels like you're making something.
Right.
And that was a big thing for me. And it was like the facilities I was in at the time, they didn't really understand how they were going to sort of implement that yet. So I got together a bunch of other people around the industry. We all decided to leave our companies and start up a new company based entirely on Flame.
Right.
Because we thought, well, it's better just to concentrate on this box. Because it was so sort of unique at the time.
Right. It was really a game changer, right? It basically, at that point, everybody knew that the online bays, the big, huge setup with all these different hardware devices was kind of sort of reaching the end.
Yeah, exactly. We were sort of trying to make as much money out of it, but it was getting more and more difficult, and then you were attaching little paint box machines to it to do little bits and pieces. And it wasn't like a complete solution.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, Flame was there, and it was early days, but you could really tell. I could tell, and the other guys I teamed up with realized really fast that this is something else.
And
so
that's
we set
when
up Smoke and Mirrors. Yeah,
that's when you set up Smoke and Mirrors, right? So that was again first all Flame-based facility. It was quite again another game-changing moment when all these talented artists sort of took the plunge into this new software. And software was pretty new. I mean, I remember really impressing people with a displacement map, right? People were like, oh my God, you can do that, you know. But it was the tracking, it was the desktop, the tactile editing.
The big thing for me was the desktop and the gestural stuff. I mean, I got to grips very quickly with the front-back map way of getting in and out of tools, but the desktop was just fantastic. You know, seeing every frame of a clip and being able to cut it in the middle and attach it to another and reverse it and key it on top. It was just really good fun.
You could play with it, right? You could reverse a clip. Yeah, you could splice it up different ways. And then you guys started doing new things, right? You started pioneering new techniques and creating visual effects that had never been seen before.
Yeah, it was sort of it was the fun days of post-production, really, because everything you did was new and exciting, and everything, you know, like morphing came along, and something else came along, and something else came along. So every technique that came out was instantly on TV from what we were doing or whatever.
Right. As we developed new features and put them in the software based on a lot of feedback that you guys were giving, they came into the software, and you guys would utilize them right away.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's why, for me, always being part of the beta program was very important, because the sooner you got this stuff, the quicker you could get it out there. So, but we used to abuse the stuff as well. You know, the more fun came from taking a node that you've designed and just did a defocus or something, and going as far away from the default settings as you could to do something else with it that it wasn't designed for, and that was fun.
Well, that was fun, and the programmers loved that, actually. I remember talking to them in Montreal. They were always so surprised with how people would use the tool and something it wasn't intended for, but come up with something cool. So I think at this point it would probably make sense to actually play your show reel.
Sure.
Because I think that's probably the most interesting visual way to communicate a lot of the hard work that Jon's done. So let's take a look at that.
Chance out of me. You're a shark and I'm swimming. My heart still thumps as I bleed. I know your friends come sniffing. Triangles are my favorite shape. 3 points where 2 lines meet. Toe to toe, back to back, let's go. My love is very late. Till morning comes. Let's desolate.
It's weird.
Keep my all lovely while we stones along my love.
I like elephants, but I couldn't eat a whole one.
Keep along my heart. 3 guns and 1 goes off. One's empty, one's not quick enough. 1 burn, 1 red, 1 green. Centigrades while the cat spins. Chunks of you will sit down to seas. Blubber rich in morning. I'll nosh you up, yes, I know slap away, but it's fair to say you will still haunt me. Triangles are my favorite shape. 3 points where 2 lines meet. Toe to toe, back to back, let's go. My love, it's very late. Till morning
27 just then. I started using hard drugs when I was 22. Like in a day, everybody was using it, so the wee shots didn't like it. I was just recently there, I had two overdoses. I was due to high purity heroin. It was on the streets of it here. I think I'll be drug dependent for the rest of my days, I think. No hope whatsoever.
We got Psycho and Demon. We got Psycho from Rolling 60s Crips. We got Junior from Ghetto Boys. As I'm looking, I'm starting to feel these real kind of emotions choking up in me because there's probably about 20 or 25 different gang members that are carved in here. I'd say about a dozen of them, almost half of them are dead.
Wow, that's quite an amazing reel. It summarizes, yeah.
Tad depressing, I thought.
No, I think actually it's just, it's impactful. I mean, I wouldn't say depressing. It's thought-provoking, let's put it that way.
Okay.
But amazing, and again, like, you know, it's hard to put, you know, a 30-year career into a 4 or 5 minute show reel, but...
Well, it's the first show reel I've ever had as well, so...
Oh, really?
It was quite tough to put
select,
it together, yeah. Find all the old stuff.
So many of those images I remember from our show reels that you know, had submitted, and they ended up, you know, we took a lot of that stuff, and I love it. I appreciate the variety, for sure. So tell me about now. We talked a little bit about the past. What's going on with you now? I mean, what are we working on?
Well, I've been directing for a few years, and
Okay.
I've got a production company. But I've always kept a flame because I've always done my own work. I tended to get VFX scripts to direct.
Okay.
So I've always had that going on, but it's become, what I was worried about was the production company side of it became very insular. You know, you didn't really get involved with the clients too much. And
Right.
so I started getting involved with the beta stuff for the anniversary edition, whenever it was, a year and a half ago.
Right.
And it sort of opened everything up again for me with Flame. And because of the speed of it and the fact it's all live now, you know, for me it feels very live. You've got You've got a live timeline, there's a live desktop, there's a live batch.
Yeah, you just switch between different views, but everything's live.
And it keeps, there's lots of different ways of approaching the same problem.
Right.
Which I think is really key for, you know, I'm not keen on sort of being forced down one route. Like,
Sure.
you've got a key like this, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. So one of the reasons I like about the new stuff is it's all open. You choose which way you want to use it.
Sure.
And there's lots of ways of using it.
And then you can, at any time, convert from one path that you went down
Yeah.
and convert something and then go down another path.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know at the start of a job whether I'm going to do it all on the timeline or do it all on the desktop, but you know, it sort of becomes apparent as you start playing with the images, you know.
Right. Well, I'm excited to hear that the 20th anniversary re-inspired you to get back into Flame, and that led to Raised by Wolves. So
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about Raised by Wolves.
It's a new venture. It's a new post-production company based on Flame, and it's a collaboration between myself and a few other people, which we're going to expand on. But it's a little bit different to normal post-production, that we're treating it like a production company.
Okay.
So every job comes in as like a production, and everyone's freelance. And you know, because we make content for everything now. It doesn't, you know, it's not just commercials or movies or whatever. It's YouTube. It's anything that interests us,
Right.
really. So we're repping a bunch of artists, whether they're editors, Flame artists, whatever they do. And the idea is to say we can solve your problem. But you know, the Flame is the sort of the key part of that package. That's what got me into doing all this again. So I got quite excited about the future again of sitting in a room with loads of clients, and because for me that's the funnest bit, is sitting there with a director or a creative director and almost a blank page in front of you, and you make stuff, and they feel part of it, especially with the desktop and all the gestural editing. You know, they know what you're doing, they can see what you're doing, and so it becomes this collaboration. It's great. When I was sitting there working for 3 or 4 years, pretty much on my own, it was okay, but it wasn't. There was something missing for me.
Right.
And it's all about the speed, you know. And the new software is incredibly fast as well in terms of, you know, this live rendering and things. And so I was just sort of fallen back in love with it again. And so we're out there. We've been doing it for 6 months. The new thing is going very well. So.
That sounds great, yeah. And no, I'm really excited to hear. And when we were talking about this this demo, and you offered to come, which was really generous of you. Appreciate that. We talked about, where are we now? I mean, 30 years later, it feels like we're back to the client-attended session. We're back to getting clients back in the room, and I really was excited about that.
Certainly for me. We could have gone another route with Raised by Wolves. We did look at team building and things like that, but actually, I like the idea of individual artists and working fast and furious and creating things.
Right.
I've always liked that approach, and it's back on the cards again, really. So, yeah, I like it. I think you're right. It's come full circle somehow. For me, anyway. I don't know about obviously there's loads of ways of.
Yeah, but I think you were
approaching
saying to me that it's so much more efficient, right? When you have the client in the room, the job can get done.
I reckon quarter of the time it takes.
Quarter of the time, yeah, because
also I would put 4 or 5 versions up, and there'd be the one that I liked and the 3 that I knew they would like. They'd always go for one of those.
They would look at something just with a link. Online,
and they go, I want that one, because that's what they. But if they're sitting with you, and they're going through the same process you are of getting to an end result, they appreciate a lot more. I find they appreciate a lot more the version I've come up with, because I did it for a reason, and it was
They see
whatever
why.
that reason is.
Yes.
And they see why. Yeah, they watch what you're doing, and it's great.
Yeah,
like
and they can appreciate your talent, right? Because you're thinking of things on
hope
the
so.
fly. Let's hope so. But again, I appreciate that you're really embracing the new version. I mean, that's wonderful to hear. And then the way you've started your new company around it is great validation. And then, of course, finally, I think it's wonderful because Flame has always differentiated itself around its speed, the ability to solve any problem on the fly. The artists really drive that. But to have the clients back in the room, I think it's a great message,
Yeah, I think also, Flame for me has always been one of those things that it's one of those rooms that you sit in that saves the day for people,
Sure.
So often you have a client in the back of the room and you can hear them talking, and they say, wouldn't it be great to get rid of that woman walking down the street? We never really liked her in the shot and stuff. And you just start doing it on the Flame. By the time they finish, their cup of tea or whatever, you've pretty much done it and shown it to them. And it's sort of saving the day, and it makes you a bit more of a hero in their eyes, and they come back for more work. And
of course.
And you don't get that so much if you're sitting on your own, really.
Right. Well, great. I really appreciate you coming over, and I appreciate your time. And of course, thanks for sharing all of these interesting stories and your background, and I appreciate that. So, a big round of applause for Jon Hollis from Raised by Wolves.
Thank you.
Jon will be around if anyone wants to have a little chat after this presentation. And again, thanks so much.